Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tiesenghausen. Today is April 18th, the main news at this moment. Since yesterday, news has been emerging about possible new provocations from Belarus. Volodymyr Zelensky stated that according to Ukrainian intelligence, roads are being built toward Ukraine near the Belarusian border and artillery positions are being prepared. Basically, Putin is trying to drag Belarus deeper and deeper into the war. I don't know, maybe Lukashenko has started believing in himself or something. In general, the stale potato pancake is playing with fire. By the way, Lukashenko himself should fear such reports that Ukraine sees preparations for provocations and pray that Ukraine doesn't take any measures. Belarusians, by the way, are writing that everything is quiet on their end. By the way, those Belarusians living near the border and not just there write in about what's happening with you. You can write to the email. The email is in the channel description if you don't want to be seen in the comments. Lukashenko's standard dances now with reservists and statements like the whole country needs to prepare for war. These statements don't surprise anyone anymore. It's clear that a full-scale invasion from Belarus is not on the table, but according to our intelligence, Russia may be considering some hybrid scenarios, including the use of Belarusian military personnel. We're talking about pressure tactics, meaning they could carry out border provocations, some demonstrative maneuvers, or maybe sabotage actions. The goal is very simple. They've tried this many times before, to pull our forces north to the border with Belarus. And also, the number of provocations from Belarus on the borders of Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland has risen sharply in recent days. Lukashenko, by the way, was warned that if he makes any mistakes, he'll simply, let's be honest, be turned into potato chips. From a military standpoint, the army of the Republic of Belarus has very limited combat capability. That is, it's poorly equipped, lacks real combat experience, and largely has, a parade ground structure. Breaking roof tiles at a parade, smashing bottles over their heads, that's what they can do. By the way, it's always been a mystery to me why some guy at a parade would use a sledgehammer to break a granite or concrete slab. How can that help in real combat conditions, especially in modern warfare with drones flying everywhere? Well, unless, a drone operator sees Lukashenko's fighters in a trench smashing bottles over their heads and somehow loses control of the drone from laughing. And then there's the question of not just equipment and training, but also motivation. I remember how at the start of the full-scale invasion, a journalist friend of mine conducted an anonymous survey among Belarusian soldiers, and they interviewed several dozen soldiers back then. It turned out that 2/3 of them are not ready to go and fight against Ukraine. I think that now it's even more than that. Who's going to go and fight for Lukashenko there? Well, I mean, come on. Especially against the combat-ready, experienced Ukrainian army, there are no fools. In short, Lukashenko better not even twitch and keep pretending to be a dim-witted collective farmer. Maybe it'll work. Otherwise, they'll turn him into starch just instantly. Well, there's one more, probably from me, the most plausible version of why all this is being done. Lukashenko is scamming Putin for money again. In this, the sly acid tuber has leveled up just to the skies. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You can do it right now. And many notice that after subscribing to the Calm Analytics channel, your hair becomes softer and silkier, so subscribe. Well, so that Lukashenko doesn't misbehave, Ukrainian warriors clearly demonstrate their capabilities to him. And it's definitely not sleight that they break with their hands, but they demonstrate it on the territory of the Russian Federation. And tonight, our drones hit some kind of jackpot. They struck many objects of the Russian oil and gas industry. In Novokuybishevsk, Samara region, drones attacked an oil refinery. Everything is burning. Take a look.
Oh my goodness!
They also visited the port of Vysotsk in the Leningrad region. The Lukoil 2 facility is located there. Governor Alexander Drozdenko stated about this that an ignition occurred. See, they don't say pop and smoke anymore. I mean, it's blazing so much there that they admit it's a fire. In Sevastopol, after a drone attack, an oil depot in Lebedina Bay is burning powerfully. 23 tanks are located there. Moreover, depressurization is occurring with explosions of more and more tanks. But the local Gauleiter named Razvozhayev stated that there were no fuel reserves at this oil depot, where 23 huge tanks are, as it turns out. He's lying, of course, the little creep, he's lying. And let's take a look. And at this photo, yes, that's exactly how an empty tank burns. absolutely no reserves. Well, maybe now there definitely aren't, but that's not all yet. In the Krasnodar region, a fire at an oil depot in Tikhoretsk after a drone strike. And that's not all yet. The port and terminal in Tuapse continue to blaze. They can't put it out. Let's take a look. Incredible beauty. But that's not all yet. The Syzran oil refinery was also visited by Ukrainian drones. Ignitions fires at least 2 direct hits. Watch this video. As they say in Russia, see Syzran and die. Well, our drone operators did an absolutely incredible job tonight. So many targets and direct hits. Great job, honor and praise to them. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for the defense forces of Ukraine. Today, we continue the fundraiser for the Freedom of Russia Legion, which is fighting for Ukraine. Fundraising for the repair of damaged equipment, for the purchase of drones. Legion fighters are now fighting in almost all hotspots. And another important point, they're not just fighting on the front, but also deep in the enemy's rear, making things very, very unpleasant for the occupiers. The Legion commander, the legendary Caesar, recorded an appeal to you. Please take a look.
Дорогой Борис Тизенгаузен, уважаемые подписчики его канала, от имени бойцов Легиона Свободы России я хочу поблагодарить вас за всю ту помощь, которую вы нам не раз оказывали. Сейчас я снова обращаюсь к вам за помощью. Нам нужны средства на ремонт наших автомобилей, нам нужны средства на закупку БПЛА. Мы будем вам очень благодарны и в этот раз. Вместе с вами мы обязательно победим. Слава Украине! Свобода России!
Let's help the Legion. The donation link is in the description of this video. There's Mono and PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. And there's always a QR code in the corner of the video to go straight to the fundraiser. And in every episode, I say a huge thank you from hundreds of our fighters you've already helped. You are simply incredible. Thank you very much. I read about Sevastopol, about Cossack Bay, and it reminded me of my childhood. I was born in Sevastopol. There, well, where the oil depot is burning, that's called Swan Bay. It's between Cossack Bay, they call it Kazachka, and Kamyshovaya Bay, the Kamyshy district. So I know these places very well. I've been there. And a lot of Russian military lived in Kazachka with their families, those who served in the Black Sea Fleet. And I had a classmate there whose father served in the Black Sea Fleet and held a serious rank. And he had an official UAZ with a driver all the time. It was very impressive. And his driver was always a conscript chauffeur, also from the Black Sea Fleet. Well, since they were conscripts, they'd serve for a while and then leave, so his drivers kept changing. And he needed a driver, because my friend's father, you know, he actually used to drink quite a lot, and honestly, it was something that happened pretty often in their home. He was constantly tipsy. So he always had drivers with that UAZ. So he always picked drivers with the same name, so he wouldn't have to learn a new one. One conscript finished, so he'd say, give me another one. I think his name was Petya. Give me another Petya with driving skills, and he'll drive me for a while. Then another Petya, another one, and so on. And once I saw his wife scolding him because they couldn't find a driver named Petya, it just so happened they found a Vitya or someone else. And he said, you'll be Petya now. I'm going to call you Petya. Well, his wife scolded him, you can't behave like that. Anyway, I don't know how the story ended, if Vitya became Petya or not. But for some reason I remembered it. There are tons of such stories from childhood. But we will definitely return to our Crimea. I will return to Sevastopol. All this riffraff will be swept out of there with a dirty broom, the ones who've plastered those two-headed chickens everywhere, and the tricolors will go back there to Syzran. Yes, to Syzran. Everyone go home to Syzran. And it's not the first time I've come across videos about something strange happening in Russia. That is, they are laying off employees at Russian enterprises and delaying salaries. And real people are complaining. Recently, even Chinese workers at one of the Russian oil refineries went on strike. By the way, here's a life hack. A Ukrainian drone arrives, no refinery, no strike. So I came across one of those videos yesterday, and underneath it, in the comments, is a real treasure. Pure gold, it's a treasure. So I read the comments, and my team and I specifically checked the people who wrote those comments. Well, there were a couple of bots, but mostly they're real people. Let me read you a few comments so you can understand the scale of the problem. Public sector workers are forced to donate a day's pay to the SVO. In the IT company where I worked, there were layoffs. Out of a department of 7, they kept 3. In other departments, the situation is similar. Since October 25th, the amount of work has dropped sharply. Layoffs started in 2025. Almost everyone I've talked to is seeing layoffs. They're closing branches and stores. Half of the small businesses in our city have closed. Even at my last job, they started selling off client databases. They say during COVID in 2020, the crisis was easier to handle. I work at Samokat. I don't know, it's probably a company. In Samara, they've already closed 2 warehouses, and they want to close 2 more. In Ufa, at UMPO, there's also a layoff of about 20%. The city of Rybinsk, Yaroslavl region, Vimpel shipyard, they cut salaries for workers by 30%. ODK Saturn, the city's main plant, 2 waves of employee layoffs. The Raskat plant, they cut or fired 2/3 of the workers. I worked in window production, got laid off, moved to a tire plant, and here everyone is being laid off too. In Kuzbas, mines and open pits are closing, wages are being delayed, and there are simply hundreds of such comments. Chelyabinsk, Metron introduced a 3-day week. At our production facility, wage delays have been going on for 4 months. There are no orders. And what is happening, one wants to ask. And then there's one comment that everyone liked, so that people without jobs would go to the SVO. It's simple, some user wrote. And here is a statement. This isn't just comments from people, but a specific statement from a Russian official. The reserves of the Russian economy are practically exhausted. This was stated by the Minister of Economic Development of the Russian Federation, Reshetnikov. That's exactly what he said. I checked. He said this at the Entrepreneurship Support Infrastructure Forum, My Business, in Vsevolozhsk, and added that this could lead to severe consequences for business. The treasury is empty, my lord, like in a computer game, right? What on earth are those officials thinking? Putin says everything is blooming and smelling sweet. The economy is soaring into space, sanctions are only benefiting everyone. And here, Russian officials and Russian citizens are coming out one by one, saying things that were simply forbidden to talk about before. Have you noticed that in the Russian information space lately, strange and uncharacteristic things are happening? Some kind of movement has started. One by one, popular media figures have suddenly started talking about problems in Russia. There are, and many of them, about the government's incompetence, about Russia heading in the wrong direction. Well, some do it in this context. Putin knows nothing about the problems. Let's tell him. Yes, there are those bloggers, Bonya, Aza. Well, and some, like Gubarev, for example, openly call Putin a puppet. Or like the blogger Remeslo, who also had a sudden epiphany and was locked in a psych ward for it. These names might not mean anything to you, but in Russia, their statements reach tens of millions of users. So why is this happening now? Well, there are several options. I won't go through them all, just very briefly. That is, there's a feeling that some conflict among the elites has intensified, meaning the elite group not in that inner circle, Putin's Kovalchuks, Kirienko, Chemezov, realize perfectly well they're being led to the slaughter. Dekolokization and business nationalization are starting. They're trying to force Putin to change course, or the security forces themselves are fanning this controlled discontent. Look, they say, bloggers and liberals are rocking the boat, Z-patriots are unhappy, let's purge the internet and nationalize assets. So that's also a possibility. A perfect excuse for finally turning Russia into North Korea. Or maybe, as many have noticed, these voices are coming from different corners, not from just one specific group, meaning several groups have suddenly become active at once. Perhaps everyone realizes that tomorrow could come suddenly, a sort of slow transfer is taking place, maybe even of power. So we're seeing the start of some bargaining, everyone's on edge. Well, the question, is no longer if the regime will fall. The question is when it will fall and who will be at the table. A Putin-style totalitarian regime isn't held by fear itself. It's held by a consensus of silence. As long as everyone is silent, each individual is silent, But as soon as these cracks appear in the glass house, this whole thing starts expanding exponentially. And right now we are witnessing that very process. Cracks appeared simultaneously in several seemingly unrelated spots. Well, or maybe they're just playing their favorite game. Putin knew nothing, he was briefed, he ordered an inquiry, and Putin sorted it out. He'll just cut off their internet once and for all, and everything will be fine. Orban is going through a rough patch in his life right now. Orban said that after his election defeat, he's fighting fatigue, pain, and emptiness, and isn't sure he can still find strength and happiness in life. Oh, I'm about to burst into tears. What a pity. Vitya, you need to be a decent human being, not a total scumbag. Sold your soul to the devil for oil, now reap the consequences. You'll have to answer for everything, as a certain Ukrainian character used to say. Life is a supermarket. Take what you want, but there's always a checkout at the exit. The bill has come for Viktor Orban. As they say, the bill arrived from where it wasn't expected. This is just the beginning. Now, European investigators and prosecutors will show up. And then it'll definitely be gloom and doom. Iran has fully opened passage for all vessels through the Strait of Hormuz. In accordance with the ceasefire in Lebanon, the passage of all commercial vessels is declared fully open. This was first announced by Sayed Abbas Araghchi, the Iranian foreign minister. Oil immediately plummeted to $90 a barrel. Somewhere deep in a bunker, a Botox jellyfish is furiously beating Medvedev with a stick for this, but... The next statement. The United States failed to meet its obligations, so the Strait of Hormuz is closing again, and passage requires Iran's consent. Yesterday, Trump stated that he agreed never to block this strait again, but here we see that not even a day has passed before the strait was closed again. In short, the seesaw continues. How this will end, I think we'll see in the coming days. Already. Trump, by the way, is saying again, I don't rule out that we might somehow strike Iran again. Basically, there's a feeling that the market swing is being manipulated, and some secret trader who knows when these statements will be made is making insane money. An investigation in the United States is in full swing. Who is this secret trader predicting Donald Trump's statements? Who could it be, right? Who's doing this? And Lukashenko decided to finish everyone off with humor. Do you know what kind of statement he made? I actually checked what he's up to amidst claims that he and Putin want to pull another dirty trick on us across the border. Turns out Lukashenko immediately ran to plant trees. It's always like that with him. As soon as things get heated, he rushes to a collective farm to feed pigs or plant trees like, I'm just an old sick pensioner. I'm not involved at all. So he ran to plant trees, but he managed to leave a nasty statement behind. As they say, he made it in time. French President Emmanuel Macron, the German Chancellor, they are just temporary placeholders. That's the trouble with Western countries and their leaders, Lukashenko stated in an interview with, well, who else? Russia Today. In your West, and this is your problem, and Macrons and Merz's and so on. The fact that they are temporary, you see? They're just passing through. They came, grabbed what they could, and left. That's the basis of their policy, Lukashenko explained. Next, well, who is he? He's a short timer. He only has 4 years. What will he do in those 4 years? Nothing. He won't do anything. So a president must have time, Lukashenko concluded. It will soon be 32 years since Lukashenko came to power. Just think about it. I always remember this trip with a Belarusian taxi driver. I sort of carefully asked him, well, how are things here in general? And he said to me, what do you mean, how are things? I say, well, some elections or something else. He says, what elections? Are you kidding? I was born under Lukashenko. And he says, I'll probably die under him too. Anyway, it's almost 32 years that Lukashenko has been in power. In these 32 years, he turned Belarus into a real, prosperous, strong state with a powerful economy. Belarus is reckoned with all over the world. Oh, you see, he didn't, it turns out, right? Well, it happens. Now he'll say that 32 years is not enough. Well, what am I, some short timer to rule for 32 years? That's not enough. One must rule for 50 years. Then everything will work out. But Ukraine and Ukrainians remember everything. How Russian troops entered from Belarus, how they went through the Chernobyl forest, how Bucha happened, and how they fled back later, loaded with property stolen from Ukrainians. Everyone remembers everything. So Lukashenko will go down as an accomplice in a heartbeat. Well, you take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, don't forget. I'm asking you, please, let's help the Legion. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.